Last time on Back to Basics. And now the conclusion.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the exciting conclusion of our two-part episode of Back to Basics on Isaac and Rebekah. I am still, despite all evidence to the contrary, Pastor Don. And joining us, as always, is the wonderful, the magnificent, the voice of our computer, Courtney Fraley.
Hello.
That was an extreme Majel Barrett-Roddenberry joke for those of you that like the deep cut. Anyway, we are continuing our pineapple-y journey through this long chapter.
I don't want to know why you had a word ready picked. I don't think I want to know why you had a word ready picked, pineapple.
Because we're using it. For those of you who are jumping in on episode 2
it's our Bible safe word now.
It is our Bible safe word. And you know what? Honestly, I think we'll probably wind up continuing to use that as time goes on, because once you have a safe word, you should always make sure to continue to use it responsibly.
It's just formal interruption. I as somebody with ADHD, I'm unfortunately born a natural master of interruption, but this allows it to make some kind of sense as we're going along, to like, oh, I'm piping up now. I'm interrupting. Yeah. This is your warning that I'm interrupting you, so that we can talk about something here, because this chapter is really long.
Right. This is a long one, 67 verses, but we're right about at the halfway point. We are going to be starting our second part here from verse 34. And
it's really interesting. So let's hop back into it. I'm super into this, super into this story.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going to happen, because somehow, despite being like a Sunday school kid all my youth, I don't remember exactly what's going to happen here.
Yeah, we spent all our time in Sunday school on freaking Abraham and Sarah, basically trying to apologetics our way out of the fact that he kept selling his wife. Now we're in, Isaac and Rebekah, which is a very different story.
Well, let's read it.
All right, going on from verse 34. Ready your pineapples? Let's get started. So he said, by the way, I should provide context if anyone's jumping in here. Where we just left off was that Abraham's servant sat down with Rebekah and her family and has been asked to explain, the hell are you doing here? So he is now beginning to explain, thus, in the name of the Lord, the hell he's doing here. Starting from verse 34. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become wealthy. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. And Sarah,
that pineapple.
Yeah, I was waiting for that pineapple.
We're still gendering the slaves, but we're not gendering the stock animals anymore.
Really?
The
That's what you're pineapple for?
Yep.
Okay, fair. I was more expecting the pineapple from the Lord has greatly blessed my master and he's become wealthy. Like, no, you got wealthy because you kept selling your wife. Like,
He
fortunately,
wasn't even selling her. It was like a Ponzi scheme.
yeah.
What do you mean this is? What do you mean this is already somebody's wife?
Anyway,
Anyway,
first time I've seen Abraham's work described as a Ponzi scheme, but I like it. So yeah, a little bit misleading here.
no, the pineapple was genuinely for male and female slaves, and I was like, oh, but not male and female camels and donkeys. Because
Yeah,
I remember earlier on that mattered.
yeah. Well,
Different authors.
goes to show which genitals are important now. Moving on with verse 36. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and he has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son. I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, the Lord before whom I walk will send his angel with you and make your way successful. You shall get a wife for my son from my kindred, from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath. When you come to my kindred, even if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath.
I think this is worth discussing at this point, even if I don't have a too specific of a point. A lot of it is just pineapple. A lot of it is just like just exactly rehashing what he was told, which I think it's worth at this point in the narrative. I feel like it's worth pointing out, like, and he was honest about exactly why he was there.
Yeah. Like, first off,
Without being misleading in the slightest, using exact quotes from the
yeah,
original encounter to describe why he was there.
It's not just that, too. Please take a note of the repetition that's being used here, because it may surprise some of you to realize this, but the exclamation point is a modern invention. And ancient Hebrew did not emphasize via punctuation, they emphasized via repetition, as is common in ancient languages. So what's happening here is Abraham's servant is really freaking stressing the authenticity and clarity of what he's saying. So he's being emphatic in saying, I was told to do specifically this thing to specifically these people for specifically this purpose. And now that I have come and presented my case, my job's done unless you want to send a chick back with me.
Well, and it sells, it helps him make his sales pitch too, effectively being like, hey, look, this is my story. The last little bit, your daughter here can verify that that's exactly what happened. Like, you know, I'm here on God business.
Yeah. It's also worth noting too that it wasn't uncommon in those days if you could not get a good deal on a wife, which, because you basically bought wives the way you buy used cars today. If you couldn't get a good deal on a wife, it wasn't out of the ordinary to just kind of go for the 5-finger discount. You know, just wait until people were asleep and grab the chick and throw her over the camel, one of the other 10 guys you came with, and ride off into the distance, never to be seen from again. That sort of thing was, in fact, quite common. So him specifying very clearly that he is freed from his oath to his master upon delivering the request serves a clear purpose. Like, it's establishing, like, in terms of claim.
He's saying, I'm not going to just take her.
Yeah, exactly. He's saying, I would like to trade for her to make the arrangements that are typical in this scenario. I am not going to steal her. I have literally done everything I'm supposed to do here. So my job done, unless you're sending her back with me. I'm not going to like fight for this, but this is what I've been given.
He's putting the ball in their, it puts the ball in their court. It makes their choice. And it's basic, seems to be basically saying, you know, I'm not going to force the issue.
Exactly. So moving on into the part that you had just mentioned, seeing coming here, he continues explaining. From verse 42, I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, if now you will only make successful the way I am going, and I am standing here by the spring of water, let the young woman who comes out to draw, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, there was Rebekah coming out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew.
This is why this is so long.
Yeah, this is why it's so long, because they're repeating and emphasizing the hell out of everything. Like, yeah, we can stretch a two-parter out of this thing, but let's be honest, most of this is repetition for good reason.
Yeah.
Like, let's keep in mind, it's easy for us, as I did when I was a youngin reading the Bible, to get distracted by, oh my God, this is just the same thing again and again and again and again. It's worth not losing sight of the fact that this is happening in the context now of the servant explaining this to Rebekah's family. This is exactly what happened. This is the sequence of God-divined events that led me to be sitting here in your house, having refused even to eat a meal before I explain this to you.
It is, again, refreshing at this point to see somebody being very, very clear and transparent with their intentions.
It's refreshing to see someone being clear and transparent with their intentions, given that that someone is from the house of Abraham and their intentions have to do with a wife. That's a new one for us, but I'm glad of it. Maybe in her passing, Abraham learned something.
Good Lord.
So let's see. So before I finished speaking in my heart, there was Rebekah coming out with the water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew. I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to obtain the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you will deal loyally and truly with my master, tell me. If not, tell me, so I may turn either to the right hand or to the left. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second before you pineapple. Because we're going to get some fun pineappling in just a minute. Notice how he is repeating the sequence of events, but he's not saying them the exact same way. Like, he has rephrased them. He has paraphrased what's happening. It's not
There's nothing misleading anywhere.
There's nothing misleading in it, but it is clear that he is restating what's happening here and not simply like
They didn't just copy and paste the entire paragraph.
Exactly. And there is a sort of literary beauty to that, because like when we glance over these passages, as we tend to, we're like, okay, it's the same thing, screw it. But it's not exactly the same thing. The phraseology has changed. The linguistics of it have changed a little bit. And that does, when you actually sit down to read the damn thing, paint a picture of what's actually happening, which is he's kind of restating it. He's shortening things down a little bit. And so you cast this into your head and imagine this as it was originally meant to be, which is a tale that someone is telling over the firelight at the campsite at the end of the night or something. Because that's how these original divine stories were told. And suddenly it makes a lot more sense if they're doing it this way, because the reader of the story, the one who is reading this to the crowd or speaking or relating it to the crowd even before it was written down, is rehashing these things because he's inhabiting the role almost as an actor would. So there's a total literary difference. Like, if you were writing a story of Isaac and Rebekah and the story of the servant, you probably would not repeat all this stuff. You'd probably just say, and he told them everything that happened and they thought it was good, yay.
Yeah.
It'd be a line or so. But the complete rehash here is because of how these things were originally meant to be. Even after they were written down, they were meant to be written accounts of stories to be told to people, not as books to be read. The idea of people reading the Bible is even a relatively new invention. Like, back in those days, the holy texts were things that people didn't read. They had read to them. And that continued until, God, what, like the 14th, 15th century? Something like that? Like, this, well after the establishment of Christendom by over 1,000 years was that practice finally begun to change. So these were written for people to read to the crowds as storytelling. So that's why this is all here. Anyway, shall I continue?
Yeah, let's.
All right. So now then, if you will deal loyally and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so that I may turn either to the right hand or to the left, one of which is under my master's thigh. Anyway, continuing. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, the thing comes from the Lord. We cannot speak to you anything bad or good. Look, Rebekah's before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham,
Pineapple,
I figured.
one, they are really quick to do this, but in the context of what's happening, and I would assume would these people have been like aware of who Abraham was, like before he left?
Vaguely, probably, at least. I mean, I believe that like Nahor is the brother of Abraham. Like he doesn't not know him.
But like his servant shows up and starts handing out gold trinkets, like nice gold trinkets.
Mm-hmm.
And like it has to look like, okay, this is a good deal for us.
Yeah.
This is probably going to be a good deal for our daughter.
Exactly.
Considering how women are treated at the time. So you can kind of understand why they jump on that and be like, sold.
Yeah. At this point in the story,
Rebecca, get it.
Yeah. At this point in the story, Abraham is a familial relationship, but not perhaps a very close one. Kind of be like if one of your cousins turned up at your door or something. Like you'd be like, all right, I haven't seen you in like what 8-10 years, but hey, dude, welcome in. Right. Same sort of thing happening here. And their quickness to offload Rebekah, like this is you're right, this is a good deal that's being put in front of them. Not only is Abraham clearly well off for himself to send a servant and a dozen other guys, basically, carrying a whole bunch of gold and stuff to go looking for a single bride.
And he seems to have an in with God from the looks of
things. Yeah, exactly. He clearly seems to have an in with the divine or one of the divines, depending on how... It seems to be implied that since his departure, Nahor has become monotheistic as well. Yeah, no, for sure, but hey, whatever. So like he seems to have divinity, he seems to have wealth. We have no indication that he like sells female relatives into sexual slavery, so we're all good. But also like consider the safety of that arrangement. Wealthy, powerful, protected by God, and a family member. Like they basically dropped the golden ticket on Nahor's lap here. Well, Milcah and Bethuel anyway. And so, yeah, that's definitely a case where they'd probably be like, yeah, obviously we'll take that deal.
Yeah.
Let's be very, very clear as well that I said Milcah and Bethuel, I meant Laban and Bethuel. Let's be very clear too that marriages were purchases in those days. I really have to remind people that the way they work.
I wasn't thinking of bringing it up because we talked about it a few minutes ago, but
I always have to. I don't assume people remember this, but it is worth knowing that marriages were social arrangements. They were purchases. There were things like that. The women didn't particularly have agency in it in those days. So they're being presented with a situation where, yes, Rebekah doesn't really have agency in the arrangement, but it's a damn good one for her. Like she's not likely to get a better deal in her life.
Like if you're going to be married off to someone to secure the family and the family's well-being and status and all that, it might as well be to somebody who's, clearly doing good for themselves. Yeah. And is going to treat you as though God himself chose you.
Yeah. And like
marry his kid.
Who wouldn't want to sell their daughter into a family that clearly knows how to acquire riches? They must have some technique that she'll be safe in that will allow them to gain more riches, right? There's missing a piece or two of information, but I don't believe Isaac continues the trend, so I think we're fine. Anyway, continuing on with verse 52. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before the Lord, and the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and her mother most costly ornaments. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they rose in the morning, he said, "Send me back to my master." Her brother and mother said, "Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that, she may go." But he said to them, "Do not delay me, since the Lord has made my journey successful. Let me go that I may go to my master." They said, "We'll call the young woman and ask her." And they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will." So they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse along with Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "May you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring gain possession of the gates of their foes." Then Rebekah and her maids rose up, mounted the camels, and followed the man and the servant, took Rebekah, and went his way.
Pineapple.
Yo.
Did we just get like voluntary young female agency on some level?
Did you notice that? We sure did. They gave her a choice in the
You're
match.
like, oh, how about we ask her what she wants?
Yeah. Now it's
And
worth
you get the impression she's cool with this deal too, because she knows the score, you know?
right. And it's worth noting that that whole kind of like 10-day waiting period, we may not be able to accomplish that for, things like guns, but for women, like that was pretty much the standard.
And he's like, no, we got to get going like
Yeah.
now.
Like
the fact that they're like, all right, let's ask her.
Yeah. And
then they go with what she says, no questions asked. They're like, all right, here we go. Let's pack your shit and get your nurse.
And who knew that female agency was the gun show loophole of the ancient Middle East? It's a quick way around the waiting period, right?
You need to stop today, dude.
Hey, I'm killing it.
Come on, man.
Oh God, I'm the worst. Anyway, moving on. So we get this agency from Rebekah, which is nice. It's kind of a harbinger of the direction that things are likely to go in the fullness of time, we hope.
I'm not sure how I feel about something here.
Okay.
About just a random nitpicking, because we've got a little bit of time and I see we're getting to the end here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to feel about the fact that when there's something consensual going on, as far as women going off to hook up elsewhere, their family got some costly ornaments, it says. Yeah. And I'm just remembering the kind of shit that Abraham was swindling people out of by tricking them into trying to bone his wife. Like, I don't know. I feel like fate should say, and he gave them a whole ton of shit. Sorry, I've broken into the swearing late this time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like, I don't know. And at the same time, part of me is like, okay, this is much more reasonable instead of, it seems more like a, token of our appreciation than a proper, like, insane dowry.
Yeah. And it's like, it's worth noting, and this will inform yet again our reading of the Abrahamic story again, is that this is something that isn't mentioned in the several times that Abraham sold his wife. But every time he did that, like, this also happened where he was paid for her as well. So he got paid, and then when they found out what happened, he got paid again. Like, you're talking about double dipping. This is a man who really double dipped here. He got paid twice.
Jeez. All right.
So, like, this here is actually normal for.
So this is normal. Okay.
And this is like we
Abraham has set me up for some unfortunate expectations over the course of this book.
Yeah, but this exchange is not abnormal. Like, you invite someone to join the family. When they agree, you shower them with gifts and pay the dowry and make all the necessary arrangements, have your waiting period, which they bought their way around with a little bit of female agency. Go girl. Yeah. Yo. And then they moved on. And like, this is actually the only major difference from this for the traditions of the time is the involvement of God in the process. Like, that's the only marked difference, because normally it's pretty much just a business transaction. But involving God in the process and God as guidance is the unique part of this by the standard of the time.
All right, well,
let's polish this sucker off. All right, so now Isaac had come from Bir Laharoi and was settled in the Negev. Isaac went out in the evening to walk in the field, and looking up, he saw camels coming. And Rebekah looked up, and when she saw Isaac, she slipped quickly from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is the man over there walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself, and the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Why did they have to make it creepy at the end?
No, right? Um,
I'm all just like, oh, I mean, admittedly, some of this is me not understanding like their societal norms, but it kind of seems like, oh, is that him? Oh, okay. Like, it's kind
but
of the
that
vibe.
is very much what it is. It's like this is kind of painted in here to kind
Like
of
joked about it, like,
no,
ooh,
she actually kind of
oh,
likes
he's
the
cute.
guy. Um, and like she's actually like you get from this a picture of Rebecca as actually excited to be involved in this.
But and laying with his new wife for the first time was a great comfort after the loss of his mother is a really, really creepy sentiment. I'm just gonna say it. It's super fucking
Look,
creepy.
we all deal with death in our own ways, not gonna lie. Isaac had his way of dealing with death, and it is consistent with the way his family deals with emotional issues. Like, yeah, he's Abraham's son. How is he going to deal with grief? How does Abraham deal with everything? It is what it is. But even like if we set that aside, like our instinct is to kind of puritanicalize that a little bit. But the truth is, like, embracing sexual expression is actually a reasonable way to deal with grief. Like, as long as you're not doing it in unhealthy ways. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, just
That's fair enough. Just because it's odd to me doesn't mean it's odd to everybody.
exactly.
Different.
And
I hate to use it in this phrasing in this specific instance, but different strokes for different folks.
that was an unfortunate phrasing, but you're not wrong. Also, I should highlight too the undercurrent of what we now call toxic masculinity that's running through that period as well. There weren't a lot of, it is unfortunate that the last verses of this passage are really making it about Isaac when this whole verse has been about Rebekah. But it is worth noting that for men of the period, particularly younger men, not dissimilar from how it is today in a lot of places, there aren't ways for men to express grief or softer emotions and to let their guards down in that way outside of marital relations. So, not to put too fine a point on it or to do the same thing you just did, but this must have been a real release for him.
Well, and it's funny because up until this stupid sex joke, like which fair cop, it made it make a little bit of sense, but then again, I'm like, oh, I kind of feel for Rebecca because she shows up and she's all like, I'm getting married.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy about the situation, and then immediately on her wedding night, like you're painting a picture of him just basically falling apart in her arms, and it's like that's a bit of an awakening. I'm not like.
Yeah,
I think a lot of us know what it is like to be there for a partner. And
yeah.
I think a lot of us probably know what it's like to just get hit upside the head with like, wow, that's a lot right now.
Yeah.
So, but I guess we can't know what they don't tell us. So
Exactly. And a lot of this is us reading our own perspective into this too, which to be honest is kind of the point. Like these passages like this aren't meant to be instructive in the way we expect the Bible to be. They're meant to tell us stories, and those stories we see ourselves reflected in, and they tell us more about ourselves than they tell us about the characters in them. Like God's involvement in this story is minimal. Like God's presence certainly, but God doesn't do much more than say, all right, you said you wanted this. Here's this. What, seriously, you're not going to listen to me? Come on, dude. And that's about it. Like that's where God is in this story. The rest of it is them just
about people and the foundation of a society.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the important point here. People are important, and the interactions that people have. And how
if people aren't important, then I'm not sure what the point of what we're doing, just like with being people.
Exactly. And this verse is very much like a Rorschach test for people. Like everybody sees themselves in this in a different way. Sometimes you cast yourself as a servant, sometimes you're Rebecca, sometimes you're Isaac, sometimes you're Abraham, just sitting back going, God, I wish I had another wife to sell. I know I'm going to die on that hill. I'm never going to stop clapping on him for that one. So like everybody sees themselves in the story in a different way, and that's okay. You learn more about yourself by who you see yourself as throughout.
Yeah. All
That's
right.
it. I think
Well,
that's a
I
good
think
place
this
to
has been a
stand.
fun adventure.
Yeah.
This is a story I feel like I know I heard this story in church. There's no way I hadn't heard it like at least twice in my life.
Yeah.
But I like not in a long ass time, and I didn't really remember it all that well. And it again, because it's 67 verses long, we split it up into a couple of episodes, but it kind of flew by compared to the previous
Yeah.
one. The writing is so much like, it's weird to call it more compact writing, but I feel like they got this entire tale told. Like, here's a fairly complete little story we're going to tell you here, and it's just this chapter.
Yeah, it's much more fluid. It's
Yeah.
all in one package.
It flows
attack.
better.
And if you look ahead to chapter 25, which is where we're going to be going from our next episode, we have in chapter 25, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different stories in chapter 25. We have Abraham getting himself another wife. That's going to be fun. And then Abraham dies. And then we have the descendants of Ishmael. Then we have Esau and Jacob. And then the selling of Esau's birthright. We got a lot going on just in the next chapter. So we went from one chapter, which was one story that was 67 verses long, to another chapter, which is only 34 verses long, but contains 5 distinct stories. This is a very inconsistent book, and its writer should be spoken to about this.
Will that wacky Abraham get up to some bullshit again? Find out next time.
He's only got 11 verses left to do it. Spoiler alert.
Wait a minute, he dies?
Yeah, that's the second of the 2 stories of chapter 25 is the death of Abraham.
This is a fun show. So, and because it's so much fun, you should totally tune in next week. And you know what the best way to tune in next week is? Well, you can get YouTube to tell you, hey, they made a new video. You can do that by liking, sharing, and subscribing.
Buttons. There are actual buttons for that thing that you should click on. So yes, please do the thing. And thank you, Courtney, for getting out ahead of me on that one.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just actually like, after I saw how long the Christmas episode went, I'm actually watching the clock for once, and I'm like, it's getting to be about that time. So
we should probably tie it off for today.
And we're done with the text. So yeah. Anyway, find us on Discord.
Oh yes, for the love of God, please join us there. We need more people to talk to.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's a lot of fun, but it would be a lot more fun with you there. Hey,
definitely. So come join us and yell at us about Bible stuff. It's fun, I promise. We've got a Bible study that comes up during the week as well. Details about all of that stuff are down on the website, the link to which is below. Otherwise, I would like to most cordially invite you to have a wonderful week.
All right.
See you all on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.